All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Orthodox Apostasy, the ultimate health, performance, and entrepreneurship nerd out. Today, we're very blessed to have Deanna Kanaman with us today, founder and CEO of NeoWell, a regenerative medicine and aesthetics clinic. As always, the disclaimer: this discussion is for informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Deanna, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you. We've got a lot to cover today, so we'll just jump right into it. As we always do, please begin with your Batman or Batwoman origin story, as it were. How did you become the founder and CEO of NeoWell?
Oh, goodness. Andy, first of all, thank you so much for having me. When we met, I knew we had a lot of synergy. And for me to be able to come on and have a conversation, a continued conversation around what is near and dear to me, which is helping others be an advocate for their health and wellness, is a gift. So thank you. How did It's a meandering story how I got from there way back in Forney, Texas to here. I didn't go far, obviously. I'm in Plano, Texas now, but I grew up in Forney and I didn't realize, but I was divinely set up to be exactly where I am today. But it took a lot of stepping stones. Often tell other entrepreneurs that, the where they are is not where they will end. So just keep going. And one business idea will turn into a business, and that business will turn into another opportunity. And those conversations will then lead into a path you cannot even imagine being on. And that's where I am today. But the passion of health and wellness was set in me from a very young age. Personally, I struggled with nutrition. I had an eating disorder. And so, fast forward, I was in banking when I first started my career. I landed in a program with JP Morgan Chase with New York. And it was, by all intents and purposes, a great career path. And then 2008 happened, and you and I have that in common. And anyone old enough to know 2008, you did not want to be in banking. And I was fortunate enough, I say blessed enough, because I think there was a divine intervention for me to be plucked out of banking and into a health and wellness business that set me on this path. So fast forward, I got into a supplements business that we created antioxidant drinks, protein shakes, things that helped people stay healthy. And I was surrounded by functional medicine doctors that were looking at medicine in a whole different way. And it opened the door for me to look at medicine in a whole different way. I then shattered my elbow. And what I thought was one of the worst things that happened to me set me on this trajectory to create a business around regenerative medicine. And you and I talked a little bit about it, but if I could talk about regenerative medicine all day, every day, I think I would, which is kind of funny.
Well,
So fast forward, I opened a clinic that focused on regenerative medicine, and we added aesthetics later, and that's where we are. That's how I got here. A little meandering.
well, we don't quite have all day to talk about it, but we do have a lot of time, and that's why we brought you on. So let's go ahead and kick that off. Most people fall into one of two camps when it comes to regenerative medicine. Either they don't know what it is, or they have some very serious misconceptions, which is part of why you're here today. So let's hear it straight from the authority. What is regenerative medicine and what does it involve?
I was in the camp of not knowing anything about it. And when I was exposed to it with my elbow, I had had two surgeries, was looking at a third surgery, and was around a functional medicine doctor out of Florida that was doing stem cell treatments. And I thought, how in the world is that going to help my chronically inflamed, not functioning elbow? And I actually wasn't convinced because of the science. I was convinced because I heard enough stories around this doctor that made me pause. And I tell people to stay open enough with options for their health enough to pause and to process and to think and consider. maybe there's a better way of looking at these options. And so that was my pause when I heard someone's shoulder get better, their knee get better. I thought, why not? What do I have to lose, honestly? And I did enough research to realize there's really no negative effects, and we can get into that. That's a broad statement. Enough to do the injections. And he did a unique protocol on my scar because my scar was so inflamed. He had 6 injections and it changed my scar. It changed my pain level. And so that set me on this path of discovering what really, like you asked, what is regenerative medicine? One. Second, why haven't I heard about it? Because I was in the health and wellness space by that time for many years. And I thought, why hasn't anyone said, hey, Deanna, have you thought about doing a regenerative treatment on your elbow? I hadn't had that question one time. And so that then set me on this curiosity path of, if I didn't know, then how many people could benefit from this therapy that are not that are not open to it and not even exposed to it. So what is regenerative medicine? I say that we've been utilizing regenerative medicine as long as we've been here on earth. Our body functions with regenerative medicine. Every one of us has stem cells. When we're born, we have a lot of these powerful stem cells. There are mesenchymal stem cells. Some people pronounce it mesenchymal stem cells. So when we're born, we have so many of these robust, pluripotent, blank slate stem cells to heal. That's why I say when a 2-year-old breaks their arm, Andy, how quickly do they heal?
Well, the children, they're made of rubber. They bounce right back, literally and figuratively.
And we all know this logically. We think, oh yeah, kids heal like that. But we don't think, well, why do they heal so quickly? And that is what I learned is through the process of our body knowing how to heal, the older we get, the slower it gets. Our stem cells actually age, and the amount of our pluripotent mesenchymal stem cells in our body decreases. So when we're 80, 1 in every 2 million of our cells are what these scientists call mesenchymal stem cells. And so when we're 80, it's harder for us to heal. So when an 80-year-old breaks their leg, it takes so long. They're never the same because their body can't heal. And so I have been around scientists for the past 15 years now that have been doing this for a lifetime. They have been studying these cells. They have been creating protocols, enough so that we helped over 200 clinics get set up with these treatments. And I say I'm not a medical doctor. I am not trained on the education front, but I have had thousands of conversations with people that know what they're doing. And what I am is someone that likes to create businesses that have purpose. And I love helping people with regenerative medicine, not only with treatments, that's, down the road, but I love helping people open up to the idea that the power that created their body can heal the body if it's set up properly.
Yeah, and definitely don't discount not being a physician yourself. I was just had a podcast episode with Gary Kleinman, CEO of Electrolyte Boost, and most of the innovations come outside of mainstream medicine, healthcare practitioners, because all the conventional solutions have already been thought of. They've already been tried. So it's a lot of the innovations actually come from us outsiders. So following up on that, what are some of the more common therapies that you administer at NeoWell?
Interesting enough, we do a lot of aesthetic treatments here at NeoWell, and that's because we have a training program that helps nurses and nurse practitioners to get out of the hospital system and implement some of these procedures in their own clinic. So we actually use a lot of the regenerative medicine products that we have here with aesthetics. So microneedling, a lot of people have heard of vampire facials. That's actually using your own PRP, your own blood, to we spin it and then you put it back on the face and it heals in a better way. We go a step farther and we use an exosome product that's derived from a mesenchymal stem cell to help the skin turnover. We also do injections in knees, in plantar fasciitis. We have a lot of treatments that are joint specific, but we also have muscle injuries that we help with too. We work a lot with chiropractors. We do a ton of treatments with jujitsu players, and we actually just have kind of gotten a foothold with golfers. You know, these people that have hobbies that they do not want to give up, even in their 30s and 40s. We did a consultation with a 38-year-old hockey player. His wife is like begging him to give it up, but he is determined to not because, you know, life is hard anyway. And when we have these hobbies, it kind of gives us some relief. And if we take those hobbies away, a lot of people turn to not so healthy options like overeating and, you know, alcohol and things like that. And so we're trying to keep these people in their lifestyle, in their quality of life. And we do a lot of treatments with people that are really looking outside of traditional medicine to maybe not avoid surgery, but delay it. And I say, if you can delay a knee replacement by 10, 15, 20 years with regenerative treatments, do it. What? Do it. Because you're going to need another knee replacement if you get that knee replacement too soon. I also want to just say I had to have surgery on my elbow. It was shattered. And I had to have a surgeon come in and repair, put metal in. But, you know, there's a lot of times that where we can delay and or avoid surgery with a little bit of help with these products.
Oh, yes, I'm totally with you there. I've gone under the knife 3 times. Luckily, I still have all my original parts, but it'll set you back. In my case, 18 months, 2 years, minimum to get pre-injury functionality back. So I'm all with you there. It's the farther you can kick that can down the road or the more you can avoid it, it's definitely better. You kind of touched on some of those stories. Tell us about more success stories. The jujitsu guys, the golfers, the aesthetics.
One of my favorites is Jono. If you go to our, it's regen.neowell.com. That's our regenerative group website. You'll see John O'Connell. He's a firefighter. I say that he's a jujitsu black belt world champion that does firefighting in his pastime. But he really is a dedicated jujitsu practitioner, and he had a meniscus tear, complete tear, which we actually set him up saying, I don't know if this is going to help. Like, it was a 12-year-old injury, and we have that video on our website. It was a 12-year-old injury, and the one thing when I was helping clinics get set up across the country, one of my major frustrations was clinics overpromising and under-delivering with regenerative medicine. I continue to tell people that are offering regenerative treatments, they have an obligation and a commitment to protect the integrity because it is fairly new to the normal consumer. It's not new. There's decades of research around these treatments, but it is new to the average consumer. And if we don't do right by them, then we're hurting the whole industry. And they're less likely to trust it as we progress the treatments. So one of the things I got really frustrated with is clinics overpromising, under-delivering, and then misrepresenting the technology that they were actually providing to the clients. And that is why we opened NeoWell. But fast forward, John trusted us to do a treatment. He had low expectations. And like he shares in the video, 6 months later, he was out of pain. He was doing moves again like he was before the injury. And now he's sold enough that we have this trail of Houston jiu-jitsu fighters that come up to NeoWell almost every other month. I have someone that's calling me interested in getting the treatment and coming up from Houston. So that's one of my favorites. His wife is a hairstylist and she had an elbow injury. She got treated and is back at, full function with her elbow. I could go on and on. There's several that we've treated with other chronic conditions specific to, plantar fasciitis, that are dealing with pain on a regular basis. We help them and it's fun. It's fun. Aesthetics is great. And I think I told you this when we first met. Like Botox fillers, microneedling, all of that is great because it matters what we look like and how we feel when we look in the mirror. But it's amazing when we can take someone that is dealing with chronic pain. That's all they think about. And getting them from where they cannot think about that injury to doing what they love in life, it fills me up.
Well, it wasn't on the agenda, but I think it's worth a detour to dig into aesthetics a little bit. We've talked before about men. There's a lot of closet aesthetics guys. So, for example, when I was, been doing facials for years, been seeing an esthetician, and I just asked her, I said, "How many other dudes you treating?" And she said, "Yeah, more than you'd think. It's just men in Texas just don't talk about it as like, hey, how was your facial? How and then it was great. How was yours?" So yeah, tell us about men and what they're doing in the aesthetics department.
It is the fastest growing clientele that we have. So we have a training program that supports nurses and nurse practitioners, and we also do treatments here. And it's funny because their wives will come in and they'll say, I've got to get my husband in. I've got to get my husband in. And then all of a sudden he'll come in begrudgingly occasionally. And then he'll come in 3, 4, 5 months down the road without his wife and he's hooked. And it's interesting because, there's so many. I love psychology, and there's so many studies around Botox. And again, everything can be taken to extreme. And we treat on a more natural scale at NeoWell. But you can look at studies that show that people that get Botox are actually happier. And it's because they don't have that scowl on their face when they're looking in the mirror. It's really interesting studies out there. And so I think there's more to getting these treatments. Everyone is unique and everyone's different. But I think another thing that's pushing the men to do the treatments is their partners or significant others oftentimes are looking younger with these treatments. And so they're now like, oh, well, maybe I need to open up to it. And again, my passion is to help people be an advocate for your health and wellness. There's treatments with Botox that people don't even know about with TMD, TMJ for your masseters that will literally change the scope of your life if you deal with that. It takes away the migraines. So there's therapeutic ways of looking at Botox. And I tell people regularly, like, just open up your mind, do enough question and answer periods and see if it's a fit for you and then try it. And if it's not a fit, then that's great. But men are definitely way more open to it now. And we want to make sure that we're servicing them because your anatomy is different than ours. And our trainers have to make sure, and our injector here has to make sure that we meet and provide the treatments in a healthy way for men. And we do that here.
So speaking of providing treatment and going back to that theme you talked about, over promising and under delivering. Part of your mission is bridging innovation with purpose. Let's talk a little bit more about the work you're doing with nurses, nurse practitioners, physicians assistants, other healthcare professionals to help empower them to deliver regenerative and aesthetic treatments.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the business. I say that we have 3 components to NeoWell: the regenerative medicine, which I will never stop doing. It's ingrained in me to share that with people in a way that matters and that makes a difference. And then we have the training program, which you just alluded to, and then we have the aesthetic treatments and wellness options with peptides and hydration IVs. So it's really a 3-pillar business, but the training program. Oh, Andy, I fought hard on not having to do this training program. But have you had something that was like just gnawing at you? Like there was a need and you're like, that's way too much work. but it just keeps pulling you.
Yes, didn't have many turns.
So that's what the aesthetics program was for me. So during COVID, we hired part-time nurses and nurse practitioners to fill the need here. So the pandemic happened a few months before we opened the door of NeoWell. I make the joke of never opened a brick and mortar business right before a pandemic. It's not a good idea, but that's what we had here. And we hired these part-time nurses and nurse practitioners, and they were dying in the hospital system. I heard story after story of them. You know, I just want to thank every healthcare provider during that time, because the stories that I heard, families couldn't go in to the hospital. So the nurses were the ones holding the hand of the patient. And hearing these stories, it just broke my heart. And I have a sister that's a nurse. She's a school nurse, and she was going through her own. I mean, it was not good for her either during COVID. I mean, I know we all have stories, but I was surrounded by these nurses that were really looking to get out of the hospital system and into a lighter environment. And they had some exposure to aesthetics, but they really had this dream of doing something more on their own. And in that, I kind of asked them questions about the training that they were receiving. And a lot of them were just getting 1 or 2 day training classes, no real support on the business side. And so fast forward enough questions and hearing enough nurses. I heard one story of this nurse spent $7,000 on a website when she didn't have any business and had no clue where her business was going to go. And I was like, you did what? Like, use $7,000 to buy Facebook ads. Like, that's a better investment. And I just was like, oh my goodness. And when I would talk to her about margins and why margins matter and all of those just basic things that came so easily to me, I thought we have to do something. And so what I did is what we did with the regenerative medicine, setting up clinics with regenerative medicine. I had to travel all over the country for that business. And so I thought, if I'm going to do another training business, I'm going to make them come here. So we set up a training program here at NeoWell that's really unique. It's a 6-month immersive training where they get business classes, they get hands-on training, they learn regenerative therapies to implement with aesthetics. And so it's really combined my love of getting health and wellness out there in a bigger way, because every one of these providers takes the NeoWell mission with them as they're reaching their clients and their patients.
So let's talk about so on that training theme. One of my big epiphanies when I started collaborating with you is just how sensitive some of these biologics are, and it's literally oftentimes a matter of a few degrees or a few minutes could make the difference between getting a tremendously therapeutic treatment and just getting a really expensive plasma saline injection. So, what are you doing with your training and your standard operating procedures and your quality control to ensure that patients, both your own, those of the people you train, are getting the tremendous therapies that they're paying for?
There's so much that goes into our treatments. I'm so glad that you asked this question because, again, one of my reasons for setting up NeoWell and hiring the medical director that we have that is sports medicine trained is because a lot of the clinics out there they're not protecting the integrity of the products, one. They're not protecting the integrity of the protocols, two. And they're not providing a pre and post recommendations. And I mean, recommendations is a loose term. I insist on some of these being done, and we've actually denied treatments for people that can't commit to, because I tell them, like, if you're willing to invest $5,000, then I need you to commit to doing these 3 things. Not drinking every day, because major inflammation happens when you're drinking, reducing your sugar, and and making sure that you're not having this high stress environment while these cells are trying to do their job. So we are a little like I'm protective. It's funny because our provider here on Stem Cell Day, and I say that loosely because it's so much more than just stem cells that we do. It's there's a lot that goes into that. But the provider here, she knows that when those we have a cryo freezer here, when those cells thaw, that it's immediate that they have to go where they need to go. And for the joint injections, our MD does all of the joint injections because where you inject the cells matters. And a lot of the providers out there have maybe a 1-day course on injecting joints, and they're getting it superficial. They're not getting it to where it needs to go, and that impacts the results. And we're pretty strict on what we do here and how we do it. We have a really great protocol that is unique to us based on many conversations with scientists and labs. We have a 2-step protocol for most of our joint injections, unless you're really young and not really that injured. We do an exosome treatment that's kind of a primer to the second treatment, which is the umbilical cord derived cells. So that we have a 2-week gap, and those exosomes get in there, reduce inflammation, start the paracrine effect, the healing cascade, and then that second injection actually does so much more regeneration. And I love that protocol. It has taken an injury that kind of would have gotten a little bit of benefit to someone that's really getting maximum results.
So let's talk about some of the barriers to wider adoption in the US, legal, regulatory, compliance, and otherwise, or maybe just public education.
Yeah, the great news is it's loosening. It's softening. I think when I first got into the business, let me just delete those. Okay. When I first got into the business, it was pretty loose, and it was taken advantage of. There was a clinic in Florida that was injecting umbilical cord product, a Wharton's jelly product that into the eye. Eh, No one should be doing that. I mean, maybe in a clinical study that is highly, highly regulated, but that clinic should not have been doing that, and they injured people. And so it was the wild, wild west when I first got into it. And then things got tighter because of bad actors, and people were making claims, they could heal and cure cancer. I mean, just on and on and on about the claims that were being made and misrepresenting and misusing the technology and charging a fortune and promising results that they couldn't guarantee. So the FDA came in and tightened things back up in 2018. And we all fell in line. They shut a lot of labs down, and labs that should have been shut down. Some of them I visited back in the day. I was like, I cannot imagine how this is going in someone with this standard. There's no quality controls. There's no batch testing. So fast forward, the FDA did come in, and the 2 labs that we deal with are FDA regulated. So they regulate all of the manufacturing processes and procedures, and they do everything in line with those regulations. And so I think a little bit of that tightening up was a good thing for consumers. And I think one of the reasons that it's not widely adopted in the US is because we're so dependent on insurance. We are trained to, if it isn't covered by insurance, I think immediately we think it's not legit. And I really want to train people out of that thought process, because preventative care and a lot of these alternative therapies will save you so much money over the course of your lifetime. So be open to, even if your insurance doesn't cover it, be open to learning about it and seeing if it's an option for you. I say, and I think I said it to you too, because I say it all the time, when money becomes a concern about your health, I want you to think about how much you've invested in your car over the course of the year, 5 years, 10 years. How much have you spent on your vehicle? Now, I'm asking, how much have you spent on your health and your body and your physical fitness? And a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, reminds me of the Dr. King quotation. Technology has exceeded morals and ethics. We've got guided missiles and misguided men. Yes, if somebody's going to drop 200K on their car and won't drop 20K on their body, then I've got nothing for you. That's just a case of misplaced priorities. I'm not your guy to fix it. You need to go to your priest, your rabbi, your imam, your shaman, your spirit guide. You need to get that sorted out. You kind of touched on this with the insurance, but I like to ask the magic wand, the queen for a day question. So you have a magic wand, you're queen for a day. What would you change in the landscape, whether it's legal, regulatory, compliance, insurance, public education? What would you do?
Oh goodness, Andy, that's a great question. And I want to go back to what you said just a second ago. I think it's people like you and me and conversations like this that are sparking people to invest more in their health. And so I'm very optimistic that we're at this crossroads, that we're at this breaking point of what was meeting with what will be. And we're on this bridge. And I think the more conversations we can have like this, the more it opens the mind to be able to think, okay, what else can I do personally? And then that allows us to share it with our family and friends. And then it's this ripple effect that affects our whole country. So if I had a magic wand, I would, our medical, I was shocked when I first started working with functional medicine doctors, MDs that were highly trained. I was shocked that they got almost no nutritional training. And I was shocked how close-minded a lot of the MDs that I talked to were about regenerative therapies. And I would mention clinical studies and PubMed articles and, on and on and on, and just that closed-mindedness. So if I had a magic wand, if I could wish my way into one thing, it would be to break open the closed-mindedness of our medical community. And that because they're the leaders. And so we need something to break open in them because they're the ones sitting across from the patient that just got a diagnosis that is looking to that person to guide them to their next decision. And on that thought of magic wand, I would have every person commit, like write it down. I will be the best advocate for my health that I can be. And just write it down. Like right now, wherever you are listening to this, I will be the best advocate for my health that I can be because I deserve it, because I need it, because my family needs it. That would be my magic wand.
You heard the nice lady. Go ahead and hit pause and write it down. So let's go ahead and move on to the lightning round, rapid fire. What's one myth about regenerative medicine you wish people understood better, or maybe would just like to stop hearing about?
What was that? I'm sorry, one more time, Andy.
What's one myth about regenerative medicine that you wish people understood better, or maybe you just would like to stop hearing about?
Yeah, that it doesn't work.
Ha.
Yeah, that it doesn't work. And a lot of times they'll say, "Well, I tried it, it doesn't work." And I tried it with PRP, and it was because I was 70 years old. PRP at 70 years old is not your best route for it to work. So that closed-mindedness of it didn't work, it doesn't work, I would like to eliminate that. It does work. Your body's using regenerative medicine right now, every day.
And we talk, this is about health and performance and also entrepreneurship. So let's get back to your journey. What's one leadership lesson you'd like to share with either your younger self or maybe someone else who's coming up in their own entrepreneurship journey?
A lot of times you think you need someone right beside you, and you don't. You don't. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self that, the ideas that you have, you can take that idea and make something out of it.
Mm. Yes. Sometimes you just need to have faith in yourself. That certainly learned that in my entrepreneurship journey.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I do wish I could just instill more faith in that 20-year-old Deanna.
Yes. Wrapping up, where can listeners learn more?
Well, at neowell.com, you can find me. You can follow us at neo.well. And then I am starting to share more videos. I'm actually on my own journey of writing a book and creating a YouTube channel. So that's going to be, you can follow me at Deanna K0 on Instagram.
Deanna K0 on Instagram. You heard her. And also neowell.com. And last question, what's next on the horizon for you and NeoWell? New therapies, education programs, regulatory insurance advocacy, public education. What's next?
We actually are in the process of writing an ebook for regenerative medicine. And actually, the conversations with you sparked my desire to do that because we have an ebook for weight loss and peptides because I have kind of a whole passion around that. It's not the end all be all. You need support in and outside of that to not have to be on it for the rest of your life. We have an ebook for the program and the aesthetics training, but we're writing one for the regenerative side. And what's on the horizon is we're doing more online courses. So we're going to be launching a regenerative therapy, like the good, the bad, and the confusing part of regenerative medicine and how to navigate choices. So that online course will be in the works in 2026, which I'm really excited about. So lots of things going on. I'm excited to be able to share more tools with people.
Well, we're excited too, so definitely keep us posted. So, Deanna, it was a great honor to have you today. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to many more years of fruitful collaboration with you.
Same. Andy, thank you so much for doing this and having me on. I appreciate it.